Vanessa Grant hadn't planned on crying in a bar bathroom, but here she was, gripping the edge of the sink, trying to breathe through the panic clawing at her throat. "Get a grip," she whispered to herself, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She wasn't going to let some creep ruin her first night out in months. It had taken a lot therapy, courage, and 2 tequila shots to even walk into this bar alone. She wasn't going to let some drunk guy undo it all. She took one last breath and pushed open the door. The moment she stepped out, she saw him again, that same guy who'd cornered her at the bar 10 minutes earlier, the one who wouldn't take no for an answer. He was waiting just outside the bathroom, arms crossed, a smug look on his face like he owned the place. "Come on, sweetheart," he said, stepping in her path. "What's with the attitude? I'm just trying to be friendly." "I asked you to leave me alone," Vanessa said, her voice sharp but shaking. "You're overreacting. Why don't you calm down and let me?" She said no. The voice didn't belong to her. It was deep, clear, and cut through the music like a blade. Vanessa turned to see a man standing just a few feet away, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a navy suit that screamed money and power. His jaw was tight, eyes locked on the guy who'd been bothering her. "And you are," the guy sneered. The stranger stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "Someone who doesn't tolerate men harassing women." The guy backed off just a little, but his mouth curled in defiance. "Mind your business, man." The stranger didn't flinch. "You just made it my business." For a beat, no one moved. Then the guy scoffed, muttered something under his breath, and finally turned, disappearing into the crowd. Vanessa exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "You okay?" the man asked, his tone softer now. She nodded, even though her legs still felt shaky. "Yeah, I think so." "Thanks for that." He glanced toward the bar. "Can I buy you a drink? You shouldn't have to be here alone after that." She hesitated. She didn't know him anything, but something about him, his calm, his presence, made her feel safer than she had in weeks. "Sure," she said quietly. They found a booth in the corner, quieter than the rest of the bar. He waved over the waitress and ordered a whiskey neat. When she asked what Vanessa wanted, he waited for her to answer before giving a nod. "I'm Adrian Lane," he said once the drinks arrived. Vanessa blinked. "Vanessa Grant," he smiled. "Nice to meet you under completely terrible circumstances, Vanessa Grant." She laughed before she could stop herself. It had been a while since something made her laugh. "Yeah. Not exactly how I imagined tonight going." "What brought you out?" he asked, leaning back, watching her. She hesitated, then shrugged. "Needed to prove to myself I could, that I'm not just stuck." Something shifted in his expression. "Someone hurt you," her eyes flicked down. "Not physically. Just emotionally, a lot." He didn't push, just nodded. "I get it. And you?" she asked, raising an eyebrow, trying to shift the focus. "You always play hero in bars." That made him laugh. "No. But I don't like watching someone get cornered by a guy who doesn't understand boundaries." She sipped her drink. "Well, thank you again." There was a pause. Then he said, "Can I be honest? I didn't step in just to be a good guy. I saw you before that. I noticed you when you walked in." Her stomach fluttered. "Oh, you looked like you didn't want to talk to anyone," he said with a grin. "But you also looked like you needed someone to." She smiled, surprised at how easy it felt being with him. "That's accurate." They talked for hours. About everything and nothing. She learned he worked in real estate, high-end developments, mostly commercial, some residential. She didn't know the full scope of it yet, not then. But he spoke with the kind of confidence that didn't come from ego, it came from experience. He asked about her job, graphic design, and she told him about her freelance work and how she was trying to rebuild her life after a really bad breakup that had left her broke and emotionally wrecked. He never pitied her, never made her feel small. When the bar announced last call, she was stunned at how fast time had flown. "I should get going," she said reluctantly, standing up. "I'll walk you to your car," he offered. "I Ubered here." He nodded. "Then I'll wait with you." They stepped outside into the cool night air. The street was quiet, the sidewalk nearly empty. Her rideshare was 5 minutes away. "I'm glad you came out tonight," Adrian said, looking down at her. She tilted her head. "Yeah," he nodded. "I didn't expect to meet anyone." "Definitely didn't expect to meet you." The way he said it, low, honest, a little surprised, made her chest tighten. She didn't expect it either. But here they were, her car pulled up. She started, but he was already reaching into the inside pocket of his blazer. He handed her a simple white business card, his name, a number, nothing else. "I'd really like to see you again," he said. "If you want." She took it, fingers brushing his. "I do." Then she got into the car, watching him through the window as he stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, that quiet smile still on his face. Vanessa didn't believe in fate, but something about tonight felt different. Like the universe had thrown her a lifeline when she didn't expect it, and maybe, just maybe, she was ready to grab it. Vanessa didn't call him for 3 days, not because she wasn't thinking about him, she was. Constantly. But because she needed to be sure that the flutter in her chest wasn't just adrenaline from a chaotic night. She'd been wrong about someone before, and it had cost her more than she cared to admit. But on the 4th morning, after a client canceled a meeting and the quiet in her apartment felt too loud, she dialed the number on the card. He picked up after 2 rings. "Vanessa," Adrian said, like he'd been waiting for her voice. "I was hoping it'd be you." They met that evening in a neighborhood she hadn't been to before, quiet, upscale, with wide sidewalks and discreet storefronts. He was already waiting outside the restaurant, dressed in a slate gray coat over a button-down shirt. When he spotted her crossing the street, he didn't wave. He just watched her like he was taking in every second. "You found it okay?" he asked as she approached. "I took the long way on purpose," she said. "I needed the walk." He opened the door for her without a word, and the warmth of the restaurant wrapped around her as soon as she stepped inside. White linens, flickering candlelight, and glass walls that looked out onto a secluded courtyard. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. They were seated at a table near the fireplace. A quiet hum of conversation filled the space, but it felt private, as if the world had narrowed down to just the two of them. "You didn't strike me as someone who waits 4 days," he said, glancing at her over the rim of his glass after they ordered. She shrugged. "I wanted to be sure I didn't imagine you." He leaned forward. "Did you?" "No," she said. "You're real, still not sure if that's good or bad." That made him laugh, a low, genuine sound that made her chest warm. They talked through the appetizers. She asked him questions this time, curious ones, about how he ended up in real estate, what he liked about it, what he hated. "I like building things that last," he said, slicing into a piece of seared tuna. "Not just buildings, systems, teams, places that matter." She tilted her head. "You talk like someone who's been burned before." "I talk like someone who's learned not everything that looks solid actually is," he replied. They let that sit between them for a moment. "Did you always want this?" she asked after a pause. "The suits, the deals, the meetings." "I used to want to be a pilot," he said. "Then I realized I hated being told what to do." She smiled. "So you built your own empire instead." "Something like that." He watched her closely. "What about you?" "You always want to design things." "I wanted to be a paleontologist," she said, "until I realized I loved sketchbooks more than science." "I'd still pay to see you in a desert with a shovel." She laughed, and for a moment, the weight she always carried felt lighter. The main course arrived, perfectly cooked halibut for her, lamb with rosemary just for him. The plates looked like art, but when she took a bite, it was clear the taste was the point. "I have a question," she said. "Do you always take women to restaurants like this?" He set down his fork. "No, because it feels kind of curated." He didn't smile. "It is. I wanted tonight to feel different." She met his eyes. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. "Then, because you're not like anyone I've met in a very long time. And I'm not interested in playing a part for someone who doesn't want a performance." She looked down at her plate, unsure what to do with the way her heart reacted to that. "That's a lot of pressure." "No," he said. "That's honesty." After dinner, they walked through the courtyard behind the restaurant, a quiet space lit by hanging lanterns and trimmed with hedges. The air was crisp, and she pulled her coat tighter around her. "I know this is fast," he said, hands in his pockets, "but I'd like to see you again tomorrow." She looked at him. "You're not afraid of moving too quickly?" "I'm afraid of wasting time," he said simply. Something about the way he said it made her stop walking. He turned to face her fully. "I've built my life with precision. I've designed every part of it to avoid chaos. But then I met you, and now I'm hoping chaos isn't always a bad thing." Her voice was quiet. "You don't even know me." "I know how you look when you're trying not to be disappointed," he said. "I know you choose your words like they might be used against you, and I know you didn't expect to feel anything that night, but you did." Vanessa didn't move. The wind stirred her hair, but she didn't even reach to fix it. "I don't want to be someone's project," she said. "You're not," he replied. "You're the one thing I didn't plan for." There was no kiss. There was just the echo of his words as he walked her to a waiting car, opened the door, and said, "I'll be at the gallery on East Grove tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Come if you want to." She didn't answer, just stepped inside and watched him through the window again. This time, the flutter in her chest felt less like panic and more like the start of something she couldn't name. Vanessa had never been to the East Grove Gallery before, but the moment she stepped inside, it felt like stepping into another world, a quiet, moody sanctuary of marble flooring, high ceilings, and dramatic lighting that illuminated artwork like it was sacred. The walls were lined with large-scale photography and abstract pieces, but her attention was pulled instantly toward the man standing beneath a suspended installation of glass and metal. Adrian. He wore a black turtleneck beneath a tailored charcoal coat, and for a moment she just watched him, unnoticed. He was speaking with a woman in silver heels, listening intently, head slightly tilted. He looked like he belonged there, like the space had been built around him. When he turned and saw her, his entire demeanor changed, shoulders relaxing, mouth tugging into a quiet expression that wasn't quite a smile, but almost. "You came," he said as she approached. "I wasn't sure I would," she answered, slipping her hands into the pockets of her coat. "But then I realized I'd regret it if I didn't. I'm glad you did." They didn't rush to fill the silence. Instead, he gestured toward the next room, and they walked side by side through a corridor of suspended light sculptures. "You like art?" she asked, studying the way the warm lights reflected in his eyes. "I like spaces that make you feel something the moment you step into them," he said. "Sometimes that's art, sometimes it's the architecture, sometimes it's the silence." She glanced around. "This place feels like it's holding its breath." "Exactly." They paused in front of a large canvas, chaotic reds and deep charcoal streaks layered with thick textures. "What do you see?" he asked. "A storm," she said without hesitation. He looked at her. "I see a fight." She turned toward him. "Between who?" He didn't answer right away. "The part of you that survived and the part that still feels like it's drowning," her breath caught. "That's specific. I recognize it." Vanessa looked away, throat tight. "You always this good at seeing through people?" "No." "Just you?" The weight of his words pressed against her chest, heavy and terrifying. She walked ahead to another piece, trying to breathe through the sudden rush of heat behind her eyes. "I got out of something that nearly broke me," she said quietly. "Not just the relationship. The version of myself I became in it. I don't know how to be around someone who actually sees me." Adrian stepped beside her, close but not touching. "I'm not asking for all of you right now. I'm asking for whatever part of you is willing to stand still for a moment and let this be real." She turned to face him. "What if I mess it up? Then we deal with it." She took a slow breath. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," he said. "But I'm not afraid of difficult." Before she could reply, a man in a navy blazer approached Adrian and leaned in to speak low in his ear. Adrian nodded once, then turned back to her. "I need to step away for a few minutes' business, but don't leave. There's something I want to show you upstairs." She watched him walk away, the man in the blazer matching his pace as they disappeared behind a side door. Vanessa wandered deeper into the gallery, lingering near a series of high-contrast photographs. Black and white images of cityscapes, taken from dizzying heights, rooftops, cranes, bridges. One photo made her pause. A shadow of a man standing on the edge of a skyscraper, arms outstretched like he was about to fly. "Reckless," she murmured, "or free," came a voice beside her. The woman from earlier, the one in silver heels, stood next to her now, holding a champagne flute, lips painted a sharp red. Her expression was unreadable. "You're with Adrian?" the woman asked, gaze flicking briefly over Vanessa's outfit. Vanessa didn't answer. She didn't owe her anything. "I'm just surprised," the woman continued. "You're not his usual type." Vanessa turned fully to her. And what is his usual type? Polished, predictable, from the same world. Vanessa tilted her head, and you would know that because I was one of them. A long time ago. Vanessa glanced at the photo again. Why'd it end? The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because he doesn't let people close, he lets them orbit. That's not the same thing. Vanessa said nothing. The woman leaned in, voice low. Just don't fall in love with the version of him that only exists in rooms like this. Then she turned and walked away, heels clicking against the marble. By the time Adrian returned, Vanessa was standing beside a sculpture made of rusted metal and shattered mirrors. Come with me, he said, eyes searching her face like he sensed a shift. He led her up a narrow staircase, past a velvet rope to a mezzanine overlooking the gallery. A single table was set near the window, where the city lights glittered beyond the glass. I asked them to keep it empty for us, he said, holding out a chair. Why? She asked, sitting slowly. Because I wanted this night to be more than art and conversations, he said. I wanted to give you something that felt like possibility. She looked out the window, then back at him. Someone told me not to fall for the version of you that only exists in rooms like this. I don't exist in rooms, he said. I exist in choices, and I'm choosing to be here with you. The silence stretched, this time filled with something electric. She reached for the stem of her wineglass but didn't lift it. I don't know what this is, she said. I don't need you to define it, Adrian replied. I just need you to want to find out. Her fingers curled around the glass. I do. He reached across the table, hand open, not demanding, just offering. She placed hers in his. And in that quiet space between the art and the city lights, something shifted, not loud, not dramatic, but certain. A choice made. A line crossed. Whatever this was, it wasn't pretend. And she no longer wanted to run from it. Vanessa stood barefoot in Adrian's penthouse kitchen, holding a mug between her palms as the soft hum of the city filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She had spent the night nothing had happened beyond hours of talking on the couch, but her shoes still sat by the front door and her makeup was wiped clean, leaving her face bare in the early dawn light. Adrian stepped in behind her, his white shirt wrinkled, sleeves pushed up as he poured himself coffee. His eyes caught hers in the glass's reflection. You always wake up this early, he asked. Only when I don't want to miss something, she said. He leaned against the counter, sipping slowly. I have to go to Connecticut this afternoon, a meeting with a land trust about a development deal. I was going to ask if you wanted to come with me. She turned to face him. Connecticut? It's not a vacation, he said, setting the cup down, but the estate is a place I go when I need to think. It's quiet, isolated. Something tells me you'd like that. Vanessa hesitated. I have a deadline this week. I can have a workspace set up for you, he said, and whatever you need delivered, you'd still be working, just in better scenery. She raised a brow. Do you always offer weekend getaways to women you've known for a week? He shook his head. No, but I've never met someone who makes me want to rewrite all my own rules. Her chest tightened. What are you really offering, Adrian? Time, he said, and space. To see what this could be without the noise. She studied his face, searching for hesitation, but there was none. Okay, she said, I'll come. By late afternoon, the car pulled up to a wrought iron gate flanked by tall hedges. Beyond it, a winding drive led to a historic stone estate that looked like it belonged in a movie, ivy-covered, grand but not ostentatious. The kind of place that held its own stories. Adrian opened her door but didn't rush her out. You okay? She nodded slowly. This doesn't look like a place where anyone hears themselves think. It looks like a place where people hide. He didn't argue. Sometimes both. Inside, the house was warm, filled with deep wood tones, oversized windows, and the faint scent of cedar smoke. A woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair greeted them with a nod. Julia, this is Vanessa, Adrian said. Julia's eyes softened. So this is the reason he's been smiling again. Vanessa flushed, Adrian's brow lifted. I don't smile. You used to, Julia said, already heading toward the kitchen. Later, Vanessa found herself wandering the second floor while Adrian took a call in the study. She paused in front of a room with a cracked door. Inside was a piano, a bookshelf stacked with records and faded paperbacks, and a dusty photograph frame face down on the desk. She walked in and lifted the frame. Two boys, one clearly Adrian, stood in front of the same estate, both grinning, one with arms crossed, the other mid-laugh. The back of the frame had a date and one name, Matthew. Adrian's voice came from the doorway. "He was my brother." Vanessa turned, startled. "You don't talk about him." "I don't talk about a lot of things," he said, "but I will if you ask." She placed the frame back down gently. "What happened?" "He died right after college. Car accident. We were supposed to move to New York together, start a firm. That never happened." She stepped toward him. "You built all this without him." "I built it because of him," Adrian said. To outrun the silence he left behind. Vanessa reached out, fingers brushing his. "You don't have to outrun anything with me." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his posture softened. He pulled her to him, holding her like he'd finally stopped running. That night they sat beside the fireplace, her head resting on his shoulder, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. No words were needed. The next morning, she woke to the sound of rain tapping against the windows. Adrian was gone, but a note sat on the nightstand beside a tray of breakfast. She smiled, reading the simple message, "Meet me downstairs." She found him in the conservatory, standing beside a table set with fresh flowers and silver service. Beyond the glass, the rain fell hard across the garden. "You did all this before 8?" she asked. "I didn't sleep much." She stepped closer. "Why not?" "Because I've spent years building walls so high I couldn't see over them," he said. "And now I'm wondering what it would cost to take them down." She swallowed. "That depends on what's on the other side." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "Wait," she said quickly. "This is fast." "I know," he said, "but I'm not asking for a wedding. I'm asking for a promise that you'll stay. That you'll let this be real." She stared at the box. "Why me?" "Because you're the first thing I've wanted that doesn't fit neatly into the life I built. And for once, I don't want neat, I want true." Vanessa took a slow breath and opened the box. Inside was a gold ring with a small, imperfect sapphire raw cut, not polished. She looked up at him. "You didn't choose this because it sparkles." "I chose it because it's real," he said. "Like you." She slid the ring on, her hand trembling. "I can't promise it'll be easy." "I don't want easy," he said. "I want you." She stepped into his arms, and he kissed her not with urgency, but with certainty. Like they were both exactly where they were meant to be. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, everything felt impossibly still. And for the first time in years, Vanessa didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was home. The first thing Vanessa noticed when she stepped into Adrian's Manhattan office was how different it felt from the rest of his world. The furniture was sleek, yes, but lived in. The floor-to-ceiling windows gave way to a steel skyline, but the shelves were cluttered with hand-drawn blueprints, dog-eared poetry collections, and a small, framed photo of a young boy standing beside a model airplane. "This is where it all started," Adrian said, closing the door behind her. "Before the towers, before the estates, this was the first space I designed myself. I couldn't afford an architect, so I figured it out on graph paper and instinct." Vanessa traced her fingers along the edge of his drafting table. "I always pictured your beginnings more." "Polished," he walked over, resting a hand against the back of his chair. "No one starts polished. We all show up with grit and hope." She turned toward him. "Why bring me here now?" "Because everything you've seen so far, the dinners, the gallery, the house, that's the life I built after I lost something. This is the only place I've ever brought someone into before they became a memory." Vanessa stepped closer. "You think this is going to vanish too?" "I'm afraid of what it means if it doesn't." She shook her head. "You don't get to decide how long I stay." He studied her, then said, "There's a development in Florence. They've asked me to lead the design. It's a long-term project. Years. And I was going to turn it down until recently." Vanessa's heart skipped. "You'd move." "I'd bring you with me if you wanted to come." She blinked. "That's not a small ask, I know." She crossed her arms, uncertain how to breathe through the weight of it. "We've barely begun figuring out what this is. You're asking me to follow you across an ocean." "I'm asking you to build something with me." Vanessa hesitated, then walked to the window and looked out at the skyline below. I used to think my life had to stay inside the lines I'd drawn. Safe, contained, but then you walked in and threw ink across the whole page. He moved behind her, his voice low. I don't want to be a detour, I want to be the place you arrive. She turned slowly to face him. If I say yes, if I go with you, it's not going to be perfect. I don't want perfect, he said. I want a life that only makes sense with you in it. She studied his face, the quiet resolve in his eyes. Then, finally, her voice broke. I want that too. Adrian exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. Then it's decided. Vanessa took a step forward. Not so fast. If we're really doing this, I have one condition. He raised an eyebrow. Name it. She laced her fingers with his. I want to design the studio space. Wherever we live, you can have your towers and estates, but I want a corner that's mine. He smiled, the kind of smile that didn't ask for attention but held it anyway. That's the easiest yes I've ever given. 3 months later, they stood beneath the Italian sky in a terraced garden overlooking ochre rooftops and vineyards that stretched like patchwork. Vanessa wore a soft ivory dress, her hair pinned loosely with wildflowers. Adrian stood beside her, no suit, no tie, just an open-collared shirt and a look in his eyes that left no room for doubt. The ceremony was small. Just Julia, 2 of Vanessa's closest friends, and a cellist playing something slow and full of promise. As the officiant spoke, Vanessa's hand never left Adrian's. I never imagined I'd fall in love with a man who made the world feel both bigger and smaller at the same time, she said, voice steady. You make the impossible feel inevitable. His fingers tightened around hers. And I never imagined that the woman who walked into my life like a storm would be the one to calm it. They kissed under the olive trees, surrounded by the scent of lavender and the hum of summer. Later, after the cake had been cut and the last toast made, Adrian led her through the house they now called home, past the sunlit kitchen, down a hallway lined with sketches, and into the studio. The space was everything Vanessa had asked for: tall windows, a wide drafting table, and a wall that opened onto a balcony with a view of the valley below. Her laptop sat beside a vase of fresh peonies, and her sketchbooks were stacked neatly in the corner. I added one last touch, Adrian said, pulling a cloth from the far wall. A canvas hung there now. It was abstract, vivid strokes of color, but she recognized the shapes. The skyline of New York, the glass installation from the gallery. The raw-cut sapphire. Vanessa stepped closer, eyes brimming. You painted this? I tried, he said, but it didn't look right until I let it be messy. She turned to him, tears slipping down her cheeks. You remembered everything? I remember everything about you, he said. They stood there, wrapped in silence and sunlight, in a life no longer built to protect but to expand. And as the breeze drifted through the open windows, carrying the scent of rosemary and rain-washed stone, Vanessa leaned into his embrace and whispered, You're my favorite risk. He kissed her hair, his voice rough with emotion. And you're the only thing I'll never regret. Together, they stepped out onto the balcony, the view spilling wide before them, a life unplanned but fully chosen, a love not designed but built, brick by brick, with unshakable hands.